some resources and research and thoughts that they have on the topic of artificial intelligence and how we can use this to help our loved ones and our clients. So Max and Maryam, I am really excited to have you here today, and thank you for joining us. Before we dive into this interesting topic, let's get to know the two of you a little bit better. Uh, as they say, ladies go first. Maryam, do you want to share with us a little bit about your background and what led to your current role at Columbia University?
I appreciate it. Thank you. Sorry, Max. I will start first. So actually, I should mention that Max is also my mentor. So mentor should go first. So Max, if you would like. So yeah, thank you. So I am assistant professor at Columbia University Medical Center, and I have a PhD in medical informatics. So I got my master from actually back in 2012. I came from Iran. So I had a master in information technology at Indiana University. I got another master in medical informatics. Then I joined the University of Wisconsin to get a PhD in clinical informatics. I was also intern at National Library of Medicine for about 1 year. Then I went to Mayo Clinic after my graduation in 2018. So I work with the Department of AI and also psychiatry and psychology department with focus on using AI to develop risk identification models, mostly for patients with depression at a risk of ED visits, so emergency department visit and hospitalization. So after that, in 2020, I joined Columbia University. So Max was my mentor at Columbia. And then we decided to focus on speech. So that time in 2020, speech was just the idea. So that we really just needed to explore how we can use it for different purposes to just improve the quality of care for patients. So the first grant that we got, it was from Columbia School of Nursing. So we started data collection, and after that, we got another grant from Amazon company. So we expanded that data collection method. We collected more data. So then we got two grants from National Institute on Aging. So I got one for K99 R00 in 2022, and Max got R01 so later he will explain that. So then it was very interesting and very, collaborative environment for me that just learn how we can use speech analysis to kind of develop a risk identification model. So something I'm going to discuss today would be mostly the research focus that we receive funding from NIA with focus how we can use AI, so mostly speech analysis and natural language processing
Oh.
for early identification of patients with mild cognitive impairment and early dementia.
Oh wow, this is real exciting stuff. And man, what a academic track record you've got there, Maryam. Now, Max, let's get to know you a little bit better, and then let's dive into some of the details of this.
Yeah, it's hard to follow this such a pedigree, and such a wonderful and talented person like Miriam, but I'll try
Thank
that.
you.
So myself, I'm Max Topaz. I'm an associate professor at Columbia University. But how I started doing what I do now, I have a clinical background. I'm a nurse by clinical background. But what really got me into nursing at the first place was thinking about healthcare systems and seeing an experience with my grandmother. So I'm originally from Russia. She broke her hip at the age of 84, and she actually was turned away from the hospital. They didn't want to take care of her because she was too old, according to the hospital. So she unfortunately died at home, and so that got me really passionate about doing things in healthcare and having an impact, making a difference, changing healthcare to some extent, right, to be able to avoid problems like that. So that's how I kind of got into nursing. And then so my graduate studies are so I did I lived in Israel for a while after that, and there I was exposed to like the medical field, and I started also diving into like computer science. So I really loved doing anything related to computers, right? And as the years passed, you know, computers became more powerful and became an integral part of like everybody's life. So that's kind of, I kept focusing on that. And I did my graduate degree at the University of Pennsylvania. I then went to the Harvard Medical School. That's where I did the postdoc in Boston. And all of those experiences were focused on building artificial intelligence systems, right, to help patients get better, to help people get better, basically, to better health. Then after that, I joined Columbia, so I've been at Columbia for quite a few years now, focusing on developing those smart systems that will, you know, supposed to help us get to better health, basically.
I love it. And I tell you, a week doesn't go by when I'm introduced to a new way that we can use artificial intelligence, and it starts to make much more sense than just asking trivial questions in ChatGPT or, you know, using Amazon Alexa in a certain way. It's really exciting to see how this technology can more efficiently help us identify and I mean, yesterday I had a conversation with somebody who is using AI to do personal biographies, and one of the data points on this is that when people go through this exercise, even though they're not talking to a real person, they feel less lonely and isolated. Is that they're having this conversation. So anyways, nobody wants to hear from me. We want to hear from you all. I'll let you all, I think you've got some slides to share. And I want to remind our audience that at any point in time during the discussion, feel free to jump in with questions, and I'll make sure to read those to you all, so you don't need to keep track of that. But really interested to hear what you all have been doing and what we can learn from you at Columbia University School of Nursing. So
Maryam, you can go ahead and share some of your thoughts on that.
So, Maxi, yes, I will focus on just the research that we are doing that is related to how to use speech for detecting patients with mild cognitive impairment. So actually, I just want to also share my experience, my personal experience, that I had this for about actually 20 years ago when I was just a small child that this happened. So I just want to share some slides with you about some.
Go and let's see. PowerPoint, or there it is.
So
Okay.
actually, it's something, yes. So something
Yep.
that you see, yes. So I see the picture of my aunt then when she was 55 that time. And then I had a very close relationship with her. So I just remember that we just going out and then enjoying I just enjoyed the conversation with her every time that she came to our house. But because of this close conversation, I was able to see some signs of cognitive impairment in her voice. So actually at that time, so I didn't have any insight about cognitive impairment, but I saw that, for example, when you were asking a question, so she had a prolonged pauses during conversation. And also, I was just noticed that her voice wasn't really vibrant. So just kind of something that I remember, for example, from 2-3 years, before that time. So, and if you say something that she didn't like, so just she gets so easily agitated and anxious. So then when I could notice that in these changes in the conversation, but my family just kind of attributed that one to that she became so sensitive, or it's a part of normal aging. But actually, no, it wasn't. So I should also mention that she was also regularly visited doctor office for her blood pressure, but the physicians also couldn't notice any changes in her conversation. So after that, about 10 years later, when she was around 65, 5, she was diagnosed with Alzheimer. So I remember exactly that I asked this question from a neurologist that it would be possible to identify this disease earlier. They said yes. So mild cognitive impairment is the first stage that you can diagnose, but is hard. So if you can, you do MRI, so it would be possible to diagnose this patient earlier. And it would be possible to also, if we have the diagnosis, so we slow down the progress with some change in daily life, routines, for example, some diet or some exercise. And now we know that there are also some medication that kind of reverse this progress or at least slow down the progress. So, and then when I just started my postdoc at Columbia, then I also noticed that it's not just a simple problem. We see that more than 25% of people in the United States, they have this mild cognitive impairment. And currently, more than 50% of those are undiagnosed and untreated. And unfortunately, these patients are at a higher risk of negative outcome, especially, for example, emergency department visit, because it increases the risk of fall, or maybe they forget some medication that they are using, or some adverse drug reaction from using 2 medications, for example, together. And then when we searched for the problem with the other tools that are available in the market for diagnosis of mild cognitive impairment. So MRI is one of them, but one of the major problems with MRI was that it's expensive. And also if, for example, someone visits a neurologist for some cognitive issues, they will test you first, and then if they don't see any really negative effect on your walking or some tests that they are doing, they don't recommend MRI because it's kind of very costly. So, and also it's invasive. So, and because of these all problems, so we see that if we continue to just have these problems, so the number of the patient with cognitive impairment in 2060 would be more than 40 million in the United States. And the associated cost with this undiagnosed patient is huge, is more than $1 trillion. So we have a kind of unmet need here, and this is to improve early diagnosis of mild cognitive impairment using routinely generated data in clinical settings. And then the goal is to reverse the progression towards Alzheimer and reduce the risk of negative outcomes. So now we found that speech is one of the first biomarker for cognitive impairment. So the next question would be why speech is important. So when the study focused on vocalization in human, they usually refer to this framework that they call it source filter framework. So source is the here where the larynx is located. So larynx has a vocal fold. So when the airflow travels from the lung and come to the vocal fold, so it's oscillated the vocal fold. And this vocal fold oscillations creates a sound wave. So the sound wave is a fundamental frequency. That is the oscillation of the vocal fold. And when the sound waves travel from the nasal and oral cavities, that we call it the vocal tract. So the vocal tract filters some of the sound waves, some of the frequency of the sound waves, and attenuating others. So then it creates resonant frequencies that we call it formants. So formants can be from F1 to F4. So actually the sound that we generate is not just one. It doesn't have one frequency. It can has from F0 that we call it fundamental frequency that is related to the vocal fold, and F1 to F4, or sometimes they also extract more frequency that's called F5 that is related to the shape and also the position of the vocal organ in the mouth when we talk. So now the research show that, so patients that they have a mental disorders and cognitive impairment, they usually have a difficulty on controlling the vocal fold vibration, and also the vocal organ movement. For example, they cannot control the movement of the tongue. And then it affects the generation of this formant and fundamental frequency and other variables that we can extract from sounds. So now, using this analysis of these variables, we can identify those that they have a cognitive impairment. Okay. And now our goal for early identification, so our goal is something that we are doing now, is to focus on the conversation between patient and clinicians. And the setting that we are working in home care, so the clinicians, they are mostly nurses. So we audio record the conversation. We have a speech processing algorithm that analyzes these voices, and then it estimates the probability of cognitive impairment in the patient. It transfers the data to the electronic health record, so for physicians or for nurses to decide about it. So then later, they can suggest some appropriate intervention to patients to reduce the risk of Alzheimer's. And the next question would be, so what about other methods that we have in the market now? So other methods, like one of them was the MRI that I just mentioned. Another one is the cognitive assessment test, so that they don't have a really high sensitivity. And also it's expensive to administer this test because we need a trained person. And finally, a neurologist to score the patient for this test. So for example, other test is another one that you can diagnose mild cognitive impairment, but usually when you need to go to the lab to do that. And also there is some studies, if you search, so for the articles that published in this area, you see that they use some data that they were collected in the lab setting. So they just told, for example, patient to read from a text, or they describe a picture. So we didn't want to do that. We just wanted to very actively, during the conversation of a nurse or a clinician with the patient, we just collect this speech data from patient from this conversation, and then estimate the probability of mild cognitive impairment. So we also had some challenges related to audio recording, because audio recording is not part of the clinical workflow. We tested several devices, and then we finally came up with this device that was, for example, best device for audio recording because it has a really good quality. So even Apple Watch didn't have a good quality, and the reason was because of also the battery life that was short. So we also asked patients and nurses that if they would like us to audio record the conversation between them. So the patient, they said that they love to audio record because they can later even use for reference. So go through the instruction that the nurse, for example, gave to them, and then remember what they need to do. But nurses, they kind of had some hesitation. They said that, okay, we need some training about it. We need to know why it is important. We need the support from managers. And also they said that it may affect our conversation with the patient, because now our conversation would be more towards formal conversation. So, but this is something that we just now, for the study that we are doing, so far we have 10 nurses that they send us the email that they would like to participate in this study to kind of see, because they are also interested to learn how, using just a conversation, you can detect patient with cognitive impairment. And this slide shows the architecture of the system, that we analyze the voice, the language, the patient emotion, and also how they interact with the nurses. So then each component generate a score. So then we use a machine learning algorithm to identify those that they have a cognitive impairment. So for example, for the voice, we analyze the quality, instability, intensity, the fluency of the speech, and the rhythm, so the rhythmic structure of speech. For the language, for example, we focus on lexical richness, so the syntactic error or semantic error in the patient voice. For emotion, so it's kind of if the patient talk about, so interest, it's their interest, if they were hesitant, if they kind of had anxiety, and also for interaction, so for how long the patient were able to talk, so how if they had a prolonged pauses, so and these kind of features that we can extract from the conversation. So we already had a publicly available data set that they call it Dementia Data Bank, and we tested on that data set. So we show that the performance of this system is about, so with a sensitivity of more than 85% and the precision of 93%. So this is kind of F score is a kind of, I mean, for average between recall and so sensitivity and precision. So we published several articles based on that. So one of them, for example, is published in the Artificial Intelligence in Medicine and also JAMIA. So we also had a data set for 47 patients that for each patient we audio recorded one or more than one encounter with the nurses. And our goal was to only use this audio recorded data to detect the patient with cognitive symptoms. And then using this algorithm, we found that, so the F score, that is the kind of the harmonic average between sensitivity and precision, we achieved this value, so 83%. And we also decided to only use the EHR data, including the clinical note that nurses and physicians, they have for the patients. So for the same sample, and you see that the F score was 76%. So it means that even the observation of the clinicians and the data from structured data that is available in the EHR, for example, the patient medical history, diagnosis, or other information that they collect for the patients are not sufficient enough for early detection. But only using the conversation between patient and a clinician, such as nurse, so we have a much higher accuracy in detecting patient with mild cognitive impairment. And another question that they usually ask us is that what about the different dialects? So for example, the dialect or the language of Black English language. So currently we also received another funding to only focus on the Black language and fine-tune the algorithm that we have for this specific dialect. So we are kind of expanding also this algorithm that we have and the methodology that we have. So then to extract some, characterize the Black English language, the phonemes and the lexical or the syntax of the language. So then we can fine tune this algorithm for this population. So overall, just want to summarize. So Alzheimer is one of the major health concern in the United States. And if we can diagnose it earlier and then using some device that can be easily, algorithm that can be easily integrated into EHR system, we can reverse the projection that we have by 2060 or 2050. That's kind of saying that more than 14 million, they have Alzheimer with a huge cost. Okay, thank you so much.
This was really interesting. I mean, man, I love it when you academics speak. I understand most of what you're saying, but the exciting thing that I see here is that so many of our community members have challenges getting in to be evaluated, or when to, talk to a neurologist about memory impairment. And you begin to see, way further down the road, where with all of these devices that are recording our language, is the ability to, wouldn't it be great if you're just kind of going about your daily life and through these interactions with various devices, it can begin to say you should go get checked out for this or that based on, the evaluation of your voice. It's pretty exciting stuff.
Thank you.
Let's see, I'm just gonna, before we transition to Max, I just want to make sure many people echoing my thoughts on this too is fascinating. So let's see. So Max, do you want to, you'd sent me a PowerPoint, but if you, would you like me to share that, or would you like to share it on your screen?
Yeah, thank you, Steve, and wonderful presentation, Maryam. Thanks. There are some questions emerging, right? I see that. And I can definitely share, Steve, I can share my screen.
Oh, okay, yeah. Why don't you give it a shot if we have a problem there? Oh, and
Yeah.
actually,
Yeah.
now I see there's 3 questions here. Let's go through these real quick, and then we'll transition to Max. Is that Jose says the cookie theft test was developed for aphasia. Why is the data being used for ADRD? And what is ADRD?
There is a Alzheimer's disease and related
Oh,
dementia.
okay, great. Okay, good. But okay, the Jose is obviously up on all this testing.
Ah.
Would you like to respond to that?
Yes, exactly. So, yeah, if you look at the Alzheimer or dementia data bank, so FAJ is also one of the data set that they have. So, and I mean, this picture description task or cookie theft test can be used for also detecting patient with Alzheimer's disease.
Okay.
So they separated that. So if you want, I can send you more information. Yes.
Well, I bet you can. So Jose, make sure put your email in there, and Jose, and then Jose asks, are you familiar with the European ADD Reso challenge?
Mhm. Yeah. I think that's the I think that's the data we used, right? Some of the data used is from this challenge. So thank you for pointing this out.
Exactly. They call it, I think, address challenge. Yes, it's an address challenge. It's a subset of the dementia data bank. That
Okay.
there's some articles that published based on that. Yes,
Oh,
I'm familiar with that.
oh, okay, great. And then Janet says, your slides refer to people who have Alzheimer's. How are you confirming that they have Alzheimer's versus another type of dementia?
So the last slide that I showed about the home care, actually they were for a patient that we didn't have any Alzheimer's disease because we excluded all of them. So if the patient have Alzheimer's, they were excluded. We only focus on the patient that they had a mild cognitive impairment.
Okay, all right. And then Judy says, how does the term white matter disease tie into early stages of dementia?
White matter. So it can, it's the white matter. So it's kind of in the brain. So I think it affects parts of the brain that control the language or the vocal organs. So that's why it's kind of we can create some features or some features in the voice that we can extract.
Okay.
So mostly it's because of the control on the body. So it's not just on the vocal organs, but it can be also on the knee, so the walking of the patients. So then that's why. But speech is kind of if you focus on it, and because using computer you can extract some very specific or very detailed clues, so it would be easier to diagnose.
Yeah, and for early stage dementia, I think, right, that's Maryam's work focuses on that a lot. This white matter disease is a risk factor, right? Basically, so like if you have this thing, then there's more chances that somebody would get a dementia eventually, right, or early cognitive. Yeah.
Okay, great. We got more questions that came in, but how about we jump over to what you're going to share with us, Max, and then just keep them coming in, folks. And after Max shares his information, then we'll have an open discussion on this.
Yeah, and I'm going to be brief, just tell you a bit about other things that we do with artificial intelligence. So I'm going to talk about a specific population, right? And you're all familiar, older adults. There is lots of older adults, and this population is increasingly growing, across the world, right? In the United States as well. And 1 in 5 Americans will be 65 and over in about 7 years. Now, myself and Maryam, we specifically focus in some of our projects on the setting that's called home healthcare. That's the setting where nurses come and help patients get better. And we specifically work with a large home care organization that's called VNS Health. It is a very old home care organization. So this picture is described showing a nurse in New York going from one place to another. And the organization was created in 1780, right? And we're still around. And we provide care to about 40,000 people daily in across New York, basically. So Manhattan, the other 5 boroughs. And so this organization is humongous, right? So that's great. We're very fortunate to work with this organization, kind of impact people's lives this way. Now, some of the key challenges of home healthcare is to promote self-care and decrease negative outcomes. However, we see that those negative outcomes we consider to be, they are still prevalent. So about 20% of people still experience them in home care. And those are specifically, we're talking about hospitalization or emergency department visit, which is, a big pain for everybody. Like it is a drug, right, to get admitted to the hospital, emergency department, especially when people don't need to go to those places. They preferably should be avoided. That's kind of our take on that. And we know that about 40% of those hospitalizations and emergency department visits can be prevented with appropriate care. So we are using AI, artificial intelligence approaches to identify patients at risk and try to prevent them from going to the hospital or emergency department visit. How we're doing that? So that's just one example. We have a clinical decision support tool. So an automated tool that helps clinicians identify patients at risk for hospitalizations. When they come out of the hospital, we apply this tool on the patient data, right? So we extract a bunch of patient data from the hospital. And then this is helping us to identify patients at risk for hospitalizations. And one critical thing that is helping people to manage their condition better is timely medical care. So what we are doing on this study, once we identify patients who are at risk for hospitalization or emergency department visit, we are sending a nurse to visit those patients very soon after hospital discharge, so 24 to 48 hours within the hospital discharge. We want the nurse to be there and see those patients that are high risk. So we're seeing a decrease in our pilot work, and right now we finished a large clinical trial of that intervention. And we're seeing improvements in reduction in number of rehospitalizations and emergency department visits, about 30%. And we're waiting to see what's going to be the result of this large clinical trial that we're just finished. But this is one of the tools that we're using. Another tool we're using is basically a sophisticated system that can read clinical notes in the electronic health record for people, right? So imagine, right, nurses come and see patients in their home, in home care, and they generate a lot of data, actually. They document a lot in the electronic health record, right? There's a system that they use to document things that they see in the home, patient symptoms, things like that. So we are gathering all of this data and producing risk prediction models, again, with the same goal of identifying patients at risk. And those approaches are helping us to find people who are deteriorating, who are not doing well, who need timely care. So Maryam described an example of using speech recognition to identify people's problems and then address them. So what we found in this work is that when we record the communications between people and healthcare providers, and then we look at how much of this communication was documented in electronic health record, we find a significant under-documentation. So we find that about 50% of problems that are relevant, healthcare problems, that were discussed verbally during, somebody talking to their home care clinician, somebody talking to the nurse, those 50% of those problems are not presented in the electronic health records, are not documented, basically. So that's a problem, right? And we find this problem to be more severe among patients who are minority patients, so African-American patients, for example. We found that there is a twice higher amount of under-documentation, this preliminary results, and we had a small sample for this study, but that's what we're kind of starting to see. So there is a lot of potential in using this data, and the fourth example that I want to share with you here about using artificial intelligence is that we are actually starting to study the language that clinicians are using. And what is starting to emerge from that? So imagine, right, clinicians, nurses, physical therapists, for example, are documenting their care in the electronic health record. They use free text documentation. So like they just type in their whatever they think about the patient and the clinical condition, the plan of care. Now, some of that language that is being used is not super appropriate. So the language, we see a lot of use of judgment language. So we found that judgment language was observed in about 40% of patients in this setting in the home healthcare. And judgment language, just to give you an example, would look something like that when I see a clinical note that says, patient claims smoking cessation, right? They say they quit smoking, but ashtray is still not in the nightstand. So clearly, as a clinician, if I write that, right, I kind of judge the patient and I say, hey, how they say they quit smoking, but they still have ashtray. Or we also find language like patient claims had fever in the past, but no thermometer in use. So like I kind of doubt that they would take their temperature. I don't think they would. And when we look at this language, right, so we're able to automatically identify language like that in the clinical documentation. It is prevalent again. It happens in about 40% of people. And then we see that Black and Hispanic patients are more likely to have this type of language in the electronic health record. And that kind of need to change. So like clinicians need to use better language, right? Because biases and other things are transmitted through language. And, when other clinicians see this documentation that describes somebody in a negative way, then we actually seen quality of care being impacted. So people for whom there's more description of negative language, then another clinician that would take care of this patient would read this. And we've seen impacts on, for example, the number of pain medications that are given to the patient. So like, you tend to read those clinical notes and say, hey, this patient is tricky, like I'm not going to believe them as much. And this is very concerning, again, because of the kind of the racial disparities as well as use of such language. So we're trying to come up with methods to reduce such language. So that's, Steve, that's what I wanted to share. Here are some references that we have. And again, feel free to email us, either myself or Maryam, for further things. But that's what I want to share.
I love it. And man, I got kind of stuck on that. Again, this is like drinking through a fire hose, listening to all the different aspects that you all are researching. But the clinician notes, or the notes that we take, like and again, this is not a clinical setting, but on the weekends, I'm an adaptive snowboard instructor. And after each of our sessions, we have to pull out a paper and, make notes. And, you're exhausted from doing the session, and you're thinking about the next person that you're going to serve. And when I think about like my notes are horrible. I mean, in general, you're getting through those very quickly. And the whole concept of, while we're meeting with a client, that we could be recording data that can help the next person or help us and create notes. This is an amazing use of voice and artificial intelligence that I never even thought about, that it can be so helpful. Man, this is really good stuff that you all are bringing to our attention. Well, let's get back to some of these questions here. Okay, let's see. Jose's getting the gold star because he's asking making the most questions today. But Jose is a good guy. How do you convert the voice data in your AI algorithm as a transcript, as a sonogram? He was curious about that.
So when we for the old voice data, so the waveform, all of them can be converted to a spectrogram. So a spectrogram is a kind of visualization of the voice energy and also frequency. So then, using the analysis of that spectrogram, for example, the spectrogram can be for a vowel or for a consonant or for a word or you can create a spectrogram for example, a sentence. And then when we kind of analyze this spectrogram in for 2-3 minutes, for example, if we have it for each word, then we can generate some features related to the stress pattern of the patient or intensity, or extract some features related to rhythmic structure of the voice. And for the voice quality, so then for example, if we focus on a spectrogram related to vowel, we can also extract some features. For example, if we have a measure that they call it harmonic to noise ratio. So for the vocal fold, if the control of the vocal fold, so this vibration is not very smooth, so then it creates also noise in the voice. So then this is a feature that when you focus on some spectrum, you can also identify those, so to just extract those, because if we create the diagram for the F1 frequency or F0 frequency, they are not very smooth. So we just finished a study. We have two sentences from a patient that has Alzheimer. So unfortunately, I don't have it here now, but two sentences for a patient that have Alzheimer, another patient that they didn't have Alzheimer. And then we created a spectrogram. And then for the F0, that is a fundamental frequency for vocal fold, we saw that for the patient that has Alzheimer, it's kind of broken. So for one sentence, actually, it was several broken parts. So it means that the patient wasn't able to control the vocal fold smoothly. But for the person that didn't have Alzheimer, so it was smooth. There was no broken part. So this is the kind of things that after we analyze that spectrum for a vowel or word, or over time, for example, in 1 minute, 2 minutes, we can extract those features.
Wow. And what's great is that this can be accumulated in natural conversations versus
Exactly.
going into a laboratory and where we're all nervous. And this is really cool. Martha asks, she says, curious about the difference between Alzheimer's and other mild cognitive disorders in the results of your study. My mother has progressive cognitive loss, but can still speak and sing clearly. She cannot think very well. Any thoughts on what your research might reveal for somebody like Martha's mom?
So, first of all, I should say that diagnosing Alzheimer from speech is much easier compared to mild cognitive impairment, because it has more clues in the speech and also language. And when we come to the, features, so for our study we just finished, so then we extracted 7,000 features only from voice, and near more than 1,000 only from language. So then when you combine them and you extract the most important one, so they can still predict, so identify those that they have a mild cognitive impairment. And I should mention that, so we were listening to the speech of patients that they had a mild cognitive impairment, and those say they don't. So just by listening, we cannot recognize that. But using analysis, by computer, it can show those differences. So maybe, to us, it seems, it's kind of, oh, there is no difference and there is no changes in the voice, but actually there is, but we cannot notice it.
Yeah, really good point. So Martha, that with an analysis like this, although it may appear that somebody is speaking smoothly, and Andrew said, can you list the features that you extract? And when right when he typed that in, you said there was 7,000 features. Like what are some of examples of features, just so that we can have an idea of that?
Exactly, sure. So for example, I showed you some features related to frequency, and then using if we combine these frequency features, we can also show the change of energy in this frequency. So that they call it features related to energy, the energy level in a spectrogram. We can also focus on fluency, for example, the pauses, even pauses before verb or before adverb, before noun. They kind of different in patient with cognitive impairment. It's a kind of indicator. So they show that patient with cognitive impairment, they usually have more pauses before noun compared to those that they don't. So it's another, the pauses and other things that we can extract. And also the length of phonemes, for example, phonemes for different vowels or consonant, or the syllable length in the, for words. This is the length of that is another feature that we can extract. So, and other features that are related to the, for example, a spectrogram is a kind of something that they call it MFCC. So MFCC is there's a kind of mathematical formula that some math that we calculate the frequency, and we just extract how the patient voice changes over time, and then how they pronounce something. So if you would like, so I can send you the list of features that we have, at least they kind of provide a broad overview of 184 features. That's a
Holy
kind
cow.
of, yes, exactly. And then so we also extract sub features from each of them. So that's why we have 7,000.
Wow. Okay. Let's see. Connie says, is there enough grant monies to continue and expand this research? Did the research break down by minority groups? This is very interesting. So yeah, I'm curious too, like where are you in the lifespan here, and what do you all see as the potential for this in terms of a consumer product down the road?
So we have for the grant that we have, so it's for 5 years. We are in the second year. So actually the grant that we have, and Max just started that R1. So yeah, I think we have enough money for now, at least for 4 or 5 years.
This is great. Okay, let me look over in chat and see what we've got going on here. Yeah, this has really been interesting, and it's exciting to think about this. Connie's saying, thinking of the implications on telehealth, and for those who cannot easily go to a facility to be evaluated. Yeah, just think people with dementia and mild cognitive impairment, just simply leaving the house to go somewhere for an evaluation can be challenging, and this is exciting. Andrew says, to what degree do you think vocal signs of dementia are universal versus different for different people with different dialects and languages? Do different models need to be made for as many different types of people that there are? Yeah, have you seen differences in the evaluations that you've done so far?
Yes, so we compared black and white patients, and we saw some differences. So I should mention that something that is related to the vocal folds here. So there isn't too much difference between the different group of patients, especially for English language. But when it comes to the rhythmic structure of the voice or intensity, or some features that over time that they show the pronunciation. So the effects of pronunciation, yes. So we need to pay attention to how, for example, the black patient, maybe they say A. So, and maybe it's very different from the way that another person, another dialect to pronounce it. But the good point is that there are some AI tools that we can generate synthetic data even for the voice. So, and they kind of mimic the original data set, and it kind of help us to increase the generalizability of a small sample size that we have. For example, if we can collect a sample of 50 patients, so for the accent of, for example, black patient, we can expand this 50 just patient with it, just making change using these AI models, and this can mimic the original data, that make some changes, and then it create a bigger sample that kind of be expanded to the entire, population.
And let's see, someone's asking, have you used, did you, Everett was asking, do you use smart speakers like Echo Dot? Like, is that a device that you're using to record some of this, or is there special, what types of recording device do you use to record the voices?
So actually, you have a device that they call it ceremonic. So that is I can show you quickly the slide. So it was this device that we are using.
Oh, okay.
So this is a device that we are using for audio recording.
Oh,
So it's
okay.
mainly because it has a wireless microphone, so we can easily attach it to the patient clothes, and then these microphones, and so one of the attached to the patient clothes and nurse clothes, and then it can transfer the data to a iPod or iPad,
But I
or
see here
any.
on the slide that you all researched a lot of different devices to collect data from, and arrived on that one.
Exactly.
Okay, got it. Okay, great. Let's see. Let me get back over here and see. Let's see. Okay, and then Jose, who's been asking a lot of questions, he's playing around in this space as well too. He added his
Image.
a voice test on there for mild cognitive impairment as well. Are you finding that this is an area of interest amongst researchers, healthcare practitioners, and entrepreneurs?
Yes, so actually, they just started this area of, I think, Max, I think from 2018 something, that there were a lot of interest in this area. And I know that NIA or NIH, so overall, they funded several studies. So in different settings.
Yeah,
Yeah, so I saw that also a lot of startup, not a lot of us, some startup companies that they are working on also on speech.
that's great. Let's see. Connie says there was a pilot program here with Meals on Wheels where user-friendly Alexa devices were provided to older adults to reduce social isolation. I could see using this technology and analysis to find undiagnosed in the community, especially those who live alone. There may be many programs where they call in to check on older adults who live alone. I see that this could expand with a video call. I totally agree, Connie. I mean, it's really exciting to hear this and think about what could be happening in the very near future. And the fact, one of the things that you'd said, Maryam, is that if we're having a conversation with somebody, we may not be able to detect these elements in the voice, which is the value of a device like Alexa, or just having a conversation that's being recorded, and the opportunity to trigger warning signs that somebody may need extra assistance or what have you. Really good thoughts there, Connie. And let's see, Susanna says NLP is one category of AI. How about something like neural networks for time series data like HR and HRV sleep tracking? Do you have plans to combine these methods to strengthen the detection of the model during the grant? That's a lot of high tech and academic stuff that Suzanne is sharing there, but I'm assuming you know what she's saying. And is there what are you looking in that direction with your research?
Exactly. This is a great question. So we also, probably you are also familiar with the transformer models that they built on neural network. So we are also using the transformer models, both for analysis of linguistic parameters and also acoustic parameters. So they have a kind of, transformer models are kind of models that they are machine learning models that they already were trained on other audio data, for example, from data from YouTube. So the models can learn the language patterns or the acoustic parameters in the big audio files. And when you bring it, when you bring it to your own data set, so all those knowledge were stored in the model. You only fine-tune that pre-trained model on your own data, and then it can have a high accuracy in detecting. I mean, if you have, for example, two classes of patients that they have a cognitive impairment versus those that they don't, so then they can separate them from each other. So they tune the parameters based on the data that you have.
Man, this has been amazing. And I just glanced at the clock and I see that we burned through an hour. And I am delighted that y'all are shared this information with us. It's really just opened my mind to what the future can be and how we can utilize, voice and technology to make lives better for a lot of people. And I'm really charged up to follow what you all are doing. And so keep on. I found you because I received a press release about this research, and I was like, boy, this would be great to spotlight in our community. But I really want to thank y'all, and I want to thank our audience for once again just really diving deep into some great questions and insights. So with that, any closing thoughts or things that you want to share that you didn't share? I'll make sure to put your contact info on the recording link, so if people wanted to reach out to you, they could.
Thank you so much. Yes, I can
Well,
just say
thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I guess a question in closing, are you looking for organizations that may be working with, I know that you're working with the in-home nursing community or service in New York City, but are you looking for organizations that might be interested in piloting this technology?
Yeah, it
Yeah.
would be great, right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Good. All right, folks. Well, I'll make sure to put their contact there, and that would be exciting that some of our community members get involved in this initiative.
Yeah.
All right,
Awesome.
folks.
Thank
Well,
you.
have a great day. Thanks,
Thank you
man.
so much.